I'm so sorry, I think this is my seat, Naomi Lark blurted as she clutched her crumpled ticket and looked down at the man already sitting there, her heart pounding like she'd just walked into a disaster. The man looked up from the program in his lap, eyebrows raised slightly, and Naomi nearly forgot how to breathe. He was gorgeous in a sharp, clean-cut sort of way, dark hair swept back, jawline defined like it had been carved by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. He was dressed in a black tailored suit that definitely wasn't off the rack. The kind of man you'd expect to see in a magazine, not in row D of the Civic Arts Theater. "This is seat D12, he said calmly with a voice that was deeper than she expected. Warm, but with that cool edge like he was used to being listened to. Naomi's face went bright red. "Oh my God. I am so sorry. I must have read it wrong, mine's D21. I'm so embarrassed." He smiled just slightly. "No harm done." She nodded, clutching her purse tighter and backing away. "Sorry again," she said, spinning on her heel and practically tripping over someone's foot on her way to the correct row. Of course. Of course she'd mortify herself in front of a man who looked like he belonged in a Bond movie. She sank into D21, trying to disappear into the velvet seat. She'd barely registered the first act of the play. Her mind kept drifting back to him. The man in D12 with the expensive suit and quiet confidence. She stole a glance down the row. He was watching the stage, perfectly still, like he was part of the scene. Naomi shook her head and forced herself to focus. She was here for her best friend's performance. Not to crush on a stranger she'd annoyed within 10 seconds of meeting him. After the show ended, she waited outside the theater doors, scanning for her friend. The crowd buzzed around her, dressed in cocktail dresses and pressed suits. Naomi tugged at her jacket, thrifted, slightly too big, and tried not to feel out of place. "You again," a voice said beside her. She turned, startled, and there he was. The man from D12. Up close, he was even more devastating, and taller than she expected. "Oh," Naomi said. "Hi. Again. Sorry. Again." "You really like apologizing," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. She rolled her eyes at herself. "Yeah, it's kind of my thing. Along with showing up to the wrong seat and embarrassing myself." "I didn't mind," he said, and this time the smile reached his eyes. That threw her a little. "I'm Simon Oakes," he said, offering his hand. Naomi hesitated a second, then shook it. "Naomi Lark. Nice to meet you, Naomi who steals seats." She laughed. "Nice to meet you, Simon who lets her." There was a pause just long enough to feel like something had shifted. Something electric. His gaze lingered, and she swore he was studying her the way someone might observe a painting they couldn't quite figure out. "You here for someone in the show?" he asked. "My best friend," she said. She played Ophelia, her first big role. "Then she was incredible," he said easily, like he meant it. Naomi smiled. "Thanks. She'll love hearing that." "And you?" he asked. "You in theater too?" She shook her head. "No. I work at a bookstore. Small one on Elm. I mostly read about drama instead of living it." Simon tilted his head. "That sounds like a good life." "It's quiet," she said. "Not very exciting." He looked at her like he didn't agree. "Want to grab a drink?" he asked suddenly. Naomi blinked. "Now?" "There's a wine bar around the corner. It's still early." She hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Sure. Why not?" The bar he took her to wasn't just a bar, it was the kind of place with candlelight, polished wood, and wine glasses that probably cost more than her week's groceries. They got a quiet booth, and the waiter greeted Simon like he knew him. "Do you come here a lot?" she asked. "Every now and then," he said with a shrug. She noticed he didn't look at the menu before ordering a bottle of red French, something she couldn't pronounce. As the wine poured, Naomi leaned in. "So what do you do, Simon Oakes?" He swirled his glass. "Real estate. And some other investments." "Fancy," she teased. He smiled. "Something like that." They talked for an hour. Then, too. About books, music, travel. She told him about her failed attempt at writing a novel, and he actually listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. At one point, she laughed so hard she nearly knocked over her glass. He leaned forward then, eyes locked on hers. "You laugh like you mean it," he said quietly. Naomi blinked. "I don't know how else to laugh. I like that." She looked down, heart-thumping. This wasn't how her nights usually went. She didn't usually get asked out by men who looked like they walked out of a billionaire's club. And she definitely didn't get looked at like this. At the end of the night, he walked her outside. The air was cool and her cheeks were warm. "I had a great time," she said. "Me too. Thanks for not holding the seat mix up against me." He grinned. "Best mistake I've had in a while." She hesitated. "So, is this a one-time thing?" Simon studied her face. "No, definitely not." She smiled, trying not to show how much that meant. "Can I walk you to your car?" he asked. She shook her head. "Took the train." "Then let me get you a car." "No, really. I'm good." He raised a hand. "I'm not trying to impress you. I just don't like the idea of you waiting at a station alone at midnight." She paused. "Okay," she said finally, softly. "Thank you." He pulled out his phone and made a call so smooth and fast she barely caught the words. Minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The driver got out and opened the door for her. She turned to Simon. "You don't do this for every girl who sits in your seat, do you?" He leaned in slightly, his voice low. "No, just the one who apologized like it mattered." Her stomach flipped. "Good night, Naomi." "Good night, Simon." As the car pulled away, she stared out the window, heart racing. She had no idea who Simon Oakes really was. And she had no idea he'd already decided he wasn't letting her go. Naomi stepped into the bookstore the next morning with a strange lightness in her chest, like something had shifted, but she couldn't quite name it. The bell above the door jingled softly as she made her way past the front table of new releases. It was early, and the store was still quiet, bathed in soft morning light that spilled through the front windows. "Did you get hit by a romance novel on the way home, or are you just glowing for no reason?" asked Elise, her coworker, from behind the register without looking up from her screen. Naomi arched an eyebrow. "I'm glowing. You're practically lit from within," Elise said, finally glancing up. "Either you had a spiritual awakening or you met someone." Naomi busied herself with the stack of returns on the counter. "I didn't say either of those things." "You didn't have to. Spill it." Naomi hesitated, then gave in. "I went out for a drink last night." Elise dropped her pen. "With who?" "A guy I met at the theater." "Theater guy? Wasn't that for your friend's play?" "Yeah. He was sitting in my seat. Or I thought he was." "It was my mistake." That's either the most awkward meet cute ever or the beginning of a murder podcast. Naomi laughed. "Well, he didn't murder me. He ordered a vintage Bordeaux and knew the staff at the bar by name." Elise leaned forward. "Wait, what did he say he did?" "Real estate and investments." Elise narrowed her eyes. "That's code for I own half the skyline and I'm not sure which yacht is mine today." Naomi tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "He didn't act like that, right? Because they never do. Until suddenly you're at a dinner party and realize the candle holders cost more than your rent." Naomi opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by the door chime. A delivery man stepped in holding a long white box. "Naomi Lark?" he asked. She blinked. "Yes." He handed the box over without ceremony. "Sign here, please." She scribbled her name, then stared at the pristine white box in her hands. Elise was already leaning halfway over the counter. Naomi lifted the lid slowly. Inside, nestled among tissue paper, was a single hardcover book, first edition, bound in deep blue leather. It was Jane Eyre, her favorite. Tucked inside the front cover was a small white card, handwritten in neat strokes. "I thought you might appreciate a story with a heroine who doesn't shrink herself." Simon. Elise let out a low whistle. "Okay, I take it back. This isn't just a meet cute. This is a full-blown Nicholas Sparks situation." Naomi stared at the book, her heart skipping. "How did he know where I worked?" "He probably looked it up. You said the name last night, didn't you?" She had. Offhandedly, in passing. Elise leaned her chin in her hand. "So, what are you going to do?" Naomi closed the box gently. I'm going to thank him. Later that afternoon, she returned from her break to find him standing at the back of the store. It was so casual, so unexpected that she froze halfway between the travel section and the mysteries. He was dressed differently today. No suit. A dark navy jacket, black jeans, and a crew neck sweater. His hair was slightly tousled like he'd run a hand through it on the way in. He looked up from a spine he was reading and smiled when he saw her. I hope I'm not intruding. She made her way toward him, heart fluttering in a way that was beginning to feel alarmingly familiar. You sent me a first edition. I did. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Naomi crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. Jane Eyre is a meaningful book for me. It's not just a pretty gift. I know, he said. That's why I chose it. She stared at him for a beat. How? He leaned back slightly against the shelf. You talked about how you'd read it 3 times before you were out of high school. You said it was the first time you saw a woman choose herself. Naomi blinked. I didn't think you were listening that closely. I was. His tone was quiet, but firm, certain. She forced herself to breathe. So, you just happened to have a first edition of Jane Eyre lying around? No, he said. I had it delivered from London this morning. You're serious. I don't do things halfway. Naomi took a step closer. Simon, that kind of gesture, it's overwhelming. He watched her carefully. Too much. She didn't answer right away. I don't know yet. There was a pause. A soft tension between them. Come to dinner with me, he said. Tonight. Naomi hesitated. Why? His eyes didn't waver. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since last night, and I'd like to see what happens when we're not rushing to beat last call. She exhaled slowly. Where? I'll send a car to pick you up. I don't need a car. I know, he said. But I want you to feel taken care of. Naomi studied him. Noticed the way he wasn't pushing, just waiting. It unnerved her a little. How easy he made this feel. Fine, she said finally. But don't expect me to pretend I know which fork is which. I don't care what fork you use. Well, I care if I stab myself with the wrong one. He laughed, the sound low and genuine. Then I'll sit beside you and make sure you survive the meal. Naomi's lips curved before she could stop them. 7 o'clock? I'll be waiting. By the time the car arrived that evening, Naomi was dressed in the only black dress she owned that didn't scream funeral. Her jacket thrown over her arm as the driver opened the door with a quiet nod. She tried not to gape when they pulled up to the restaurant, an elegant stone building with golden light spilling through tall windows. Inside, the maitre d' greeted her by name and escorted her to a private table in a glass-walled room overlooking a courtyard with flickering lanterns. Simon was already there. He stood when she approached, eyes sweeping over her with open admiration. You look incredible, he said. You look like you own this place, she replied. He didn't deny it. Dinner unfolded like something out of a film, waiters who moved like shadows, courses that looked like art, wine that didn't taste anything like what she'd had before. And through it all, Simon was calm, centered, and attentive. Not in a performative way, but as if he genuinely cared about what she thought, what she felt, what she remembered. How long have you really lived in the city? She asked between bites. Almost a decade. I moved here after a deal went sideways in Chicago. What kind of deal? Hotel acquisition. I thought I was ready. I wasn't. Lost $2 million and learned more than I had in 5 years of business school. Naomi blinked. You lost $2 million and just kept going? I didn't have much of a choice. He said it evenly without ego. And in that moment, he didn't feel unreachable. He felt real. Do you always pursue things this intensely? She asked. Only when they matter. And I matter? Simon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his gaze steady. You do now. The door swung open before Naomi could knock. Simon stood in the doorway of a sleek, modern penthouse that smelled faintly of cedar and something subtler like bergamot or spice. He didn't say anything right away, just looked at her in that steady, unreadable way he had. Not assessing, not waiting. Just aware. You came, he said after a pause. You invited me, Naomi replied, stepping inside. It was a quiet Sunday and she'd spent most of the morning second-guessing her decision to accept his invitation. But when he'd called asking if she wanted to see the view, something in his voice had sounded different. Not flirtatious. Not casual. Something quieter. Intentional. The living room opened up around her, all glass and brushed metal with soft lighting that caught on chrome fixtures and high ceilings. A wall of windows framed the skyline, the late afternoon sun reflecting off the neighboring buildings like glass set on fire. I wasn't expecting this, she said, toeing off her shoes on the edge of a thick woven rug. That makes two of us, Simon said as he closed the door behind her. She turned to face him. You mean me being here or this? Whatever this is between us. He hesitated, then walked past her toward the kitchen. Do you want a drink? I have tea, coffee, wine, tea's fine. She followed him, noting how the apartment didn't feel staged. There were signs of life. A leather-bound journal open on the counter, a ceramic mug with faded lettering, a half-finished crossword. Not what she would have expected from someone like him. Simon filled a kettle, then leaned against the counter. I had a meeting this morning with a group from Toronto. They want to turn an old opera house into a boutique hotel. Let me guess, Naomi said. You already know what kind of marble you'd use in the bathrooms. Actually, I was thinking of keeping the original floors. They're cracked, but they tell a better story than anything new. She blinked. You surprise me sometimes. That's a good thing? It's confusing, she admitted. I don't know what to make of you. He didn't respond right away. The kettle began to hum. I get that, he said finally. You think I'm going to be a certain way, and I keep not being that. Naomi crossed her arms. You're not what I expected when I saw you in that theater seat. I wasn't expecting you either, he said, pouring water over the tea leaves with practiced ease. Most people don't apologize and mean it. You did. She accepted the mug he handed her, letting the steam rise between them. What are we doing, Simon? She asked. He looked at her then, not just with interest, but something deeper, more careful. I don't know, but I want to find out. Naomi sipped her tea to buy time. The silence between them wasn't awkward, but it was full, like something was waiting to be named. He gestured toward the balcony. You want to see it? She nodded. Outside, the wind tugged at her hair as she stepped onto the terrace. The city stretched out in every direction, buildings rising like monuments, streets threading between them like veins. Simon stood beside her, hands in his pockets. I come out here when I can't think straight, he said. And today I just wanted to share it. Naomi leaned on the railing. You make a habit of inviting women to your balcony? No. Just the one who made a mistake and didn't pretend she didn't. She turned to him. You keep saying things like that, like you're trying to tell me something without actually saying it. Simon's jaw tightened slightly. Because I don't always know how to say it. Try. He took a step closer. You see me differently. Not the job, not the money, not the buildings. Just me. Is that a problem? No. It's just rare. Naomi's voice dropped. Do you want to be seen? He didn't answer for a long time. Then, I think I've spent years building walls so people wouldn't. But you walked in and didn't ask for permission. She didn't know what to say to that. Instead, she reached out and touched the edge of his sleeve, grounding both of them. I'm not trying to break anything down, she said. I'm just trying to understand. Simon looked at her hand, then back at her. I'm not used to that. Well, get used to it. He almost smiled, but didn't. Instead, he stepped back, exhaling sharply, as though something had settled. There's a gala next weekend, he said suddenly. It's a fundraiser for a museum expansion. I have to go. And I want you there. Naomi blinked. As your date. As the person I want beside me. She hesitated. That's a very public thing. I know. What would people say? I don't care. Naomi studied him. You don't strike me as someone who doesn't care about appearances. I care about what's real. This feels real. She didn't respond right away. The wind picked up, brushing hair across her cheek. Simon reached out and tucked it behind her ear, his touch brief but deliberate. I'm not asking you to fit into my world, he said. I'm asking if you'll let me into yours. Naomi looked away, out toward the skyline. I don't know if I fit in either one, she said quietly. Then let's make our own. The words caught her off guard. Not because they were romantic, though they were, but because they didn't sound rehearsed. They sounded true. She turned to him again. Okay, I'll come. But I don't own anything that fits a gala. Simon's gaze didn't shift. Then we'll fix that. I don't want a handout. It's not a handout. It's an invitation. Naomi searched his face for the catch, for the angle. But there wasn't one. Just that same calm certainty. You're relentless, she said. I'm consistent. She laughed once, surprised. All right, Mr. Consistent. You've got yourself a date. He didn't reach for her. Didn't press. Just let the words settle between them. Good, he said. I'll send someone to help with fittings. Of course you will, she muttered, half amused, half horrified. He turned to head back inside, then paused. Naomi? Yeah. You belong anywhere you walk into. You just haven't realized it yet. She stared at him. The city behind her, the wind around her, the man in front of her. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't entirely sure where the ground ended and something new began. Naomi stepped out of the town car at the base of the marble staircase, her heels clicking softly against the stone. The museum loomed above, lit from within like a lantern's soft gold spilling through the arched windows, casting warm halos on the crowd gathering beneath the portico. She held her breath as the driver pulled away, leaving her alone at the edge of a world she still wasn't sure she belonged in. The gown, a deep sapphire silk that gathered at one shoulder and swept to the floor, felt like someone else's skin. But the woman inside it, with her chin lifted and her spine straight, was entirely her. Simon was waiting at the top of the stairs. He wore a tuxedo, classic and sharp, no unnecessary flourish. Just clean lines and quiet power. His gaze locked on her the moment she appeared, and he didn't look away once as she climbed the steps. You're late, he said when she reached him, his voice low. You're impossible to be on time for when your stylist insists on redoing your hair 3 times. I had nothing to do with her. You paid for her. I paid for the best. You didn't have to listen. Naomi gave him an arch glance. You've clearly never argued with a woman holding a curling iron. He offered his arm. You're here now. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then slipped her hand into the curve of his elbow. Let's get it over with. You're not going to faint in there, are you? I'm more likely to run. Then I'll keep up. They entered the marble foyer where the sound of music and low conversation echoed beneath the arched ceilings. A dozen heads turned. Naomi felt the air shift around them as the room took notice not of Simon, but of her. She leaned in slightly. People are staring. Of course they are. That's not reassuring. I didn't bring you here to hide you. A man in a gray tuxedo approached, his expression somewhere between admiration and disbelief. Simon, you've been avoiding us. Busy, Simon said without apology. Apparently. And who's this? Simon turned slightly. Naomi Lark. The man extended a hand. Peter Langston. We've been trying to get Simon to attend one of these things with a guest for over 5 years. You must be extraordinary. Naomi shook his hand, smiling politely. I just sat in the wrong seat. Peter laughed, clearly assuming it was a joke. Simon led her through the gallery, past sculptures and paintings bathed in soft light. Waiters moved like clockwork with trays of champagne, and somewhere in the distance a string quartet played something slow and aching. Naomi leaned closer. Is this your usual weekend? Not lately. How many of these people know you? Too many. And how many of them know you? He glanced down at her. You're the first who's asked. They stopped in front of a large canvas abstract, all jagged color and motion. Do you like it? She asked. I don't understand it. That doesn't mean it isn't saying something. What do you think it's saying? Naomi studied the painting. That everything beautiful can be a little chaotic. Simon was silent beside her. A woman in a red gown approached, her voice smooth and deliberate. Simon, I didn't think you'd show. I had a reason, he said. Her eyes flicked to Naomi. Clearly. And who is this? His hand settled at the small of Naomi's back. Naomi, this is Clarissa Heller. She's on the museum board. Clarissa's smile didn't reach her eyes. You're very brave. Naomi tilted her head. Why's that? Walking into a room where everyone's watching. Naomi met her gaze evenly. I've worked retail during holiday sales. This is nothing. Clarissa blinked, thrown off just enough for Naomi to feel the smallest thrill of satisfaction. Simon's lips curved faintly. Excuse us. They moved away, Naomi's heart pounding. You handled that well, he said. I'm not made of glass. I never thought you were. I know. They paused near the balcony doors, the noise of the crowd fading behind them. Naomi stepped outside, needing air. The city was spread out below, glittering and indifferent. She leaned on the railing. I feel like I'm wearing a costume, she said without looking at him. Simon stood beside her, hands in his pockets. You're not. Everyone in there belongs. They understand the rules. Most of them are pretending harder than you are. She turned to him. Why me, Simon? His jaw tightened. Because you don't want anything from me. That's not an answer. He stepped in front of her, his expression sharper now. I've been surrounded by people who see my name, my balance sheet, my properties. They want a piece of something they didn't build. But you sat in the wrong seat and apologized like it mattered. You talk to me like I'm not a headline. You ask questions no one else thinks I'll answer. And if I stop, you won't. Naomi let out a breath. You're right. I won't. He reached for her hand, his voice low. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to stay. She stared at him, heart thudding. You don't even know what I want. Then tell me. I want to matter on my own terms. I want to build something real. Not just float in someone else's world. Simon nodded. Then let's build it together. Naomi blinked. What are you saying? I bought a property. Old bookstore downtown. Needs renovation. Her jaw dropped. What? I want to open it with you. As a partner. Your vision. My resources. She pulled her hand back. Are you serious? Completely. I don't want to be your project. You're not. You're the architect. Naomi didn't answer right away. The city hummed around them. Then, softly, you're dangerous. Because I believe in you? Because you make it hard not to believe in myself. Simon stepped closer. Then let me show you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Naomi's breath caught. You're not. I'm not proposing marriage. The box opened. Inside sat a single brass key, worn but polished. This is the key to the shop, he said. You decide what happens next. I'm not walking away, but I'll only move forward if you do. Naomi stared down at it, everything in her chest tightening at once. She closed the box gently. I want to see it, she said. His eyes lit. Tonight. She nodded. Right now. They left the gala without a word to anyone. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just the two of them stepping into the night. The building was quiet when they arrived. A corner lot with a cracked tile facade and dusty windows. Naomi stepped inside and inhaled the scent of old paper and forgotten dreams. This could be something, she whispered. It already is. She turned to him. You were never the prize, Simon. He looked at her, unmoving. I was, she said. You just saw it before I did. He closed the distance between them and pressed his forehead to hers. You were always the story worth telling. And when he kissed her, it wasn't a beginning or an ending. It was everything in between finally coming home. The old bookstore had transformed over the span of 4 months, not overnight, not without setbacks, but with a clarity of purpose Naomi had never experienced before, not in any job, not in any plan. The once dusty windows now gleamed, the cracked tile replaced with a mosaic she'd hand-picked from a salvage yard on the edge of the city. The shelves were custom-built, the wood dark mahogany with brass accents, and every title inside had been chosen by Naomi herself, every single one. Now, as she stood in the center of the store's warm, golden light, the faint scent of fresh coffee and aged paper wrapping around her, she could feel the echo of what they'd built together. Not just a business, not just another restored property in Simon Oak's empire. This was hers, and it was open. Simon walked in without knocking, holding a small brown bag in one hand and a single white tulip in the other. "You should be resting," Naomi said, brushing her fingers along the edge of the new counter. "You should be celebrating," he replied, stepping closer. She took the flower, smiling. "You're early. I couldn't stay away." "Still not used to that," she said under her breath, tucking the tulip into the glass vase beside the register. Simon set the brown bag down and opened it to reveal 2 pastries, still warm. "I stopped at that place on 12th you liked. The one with the rude barista and the perfect croissants." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You remembered." "I remember everything when it comes to you." She leaned against the bookshelf beside him, crossing her arms. "We did it." He studied her for a moment. "You did it. I just stood behind you." "That's not true." "It is. You had the vision. I just gave it room to breathe." She looked around the shop, the light catching on the painted sign above the entrance. Lark and Company. "I still haven't figured out what the Co stands for," she said. Simon reached for her hand. "It stands for whatever comes next." She blinked at him. "That's dangerously romantic." "I'm aiming higher than dangerous." Naomi hesitated, then pulled him gently toward the reading nook in the back, a small alcove with velvet armchairs and a low table stacked with poetry collections. They sat, knees brushing. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a beat. "Anything. Why didn't you ever tell me how rich you really are?" He didn't flinch. "Because it's the least interesting thing about me. And I didn't want it to be the most interesting thing about us." Naomi considered that. "You know, I used to wonder if I could ever feel equal to you. Not because of the money, but because of the way you walk into a room and own it." Simon tilted his head. "You don't need to own a room. You just need to be the person someone looks for in it." She swallowed hard. "I think I finally get that. I'm glad." A bell chimed softly at the door, her first customer. Naomi stood, smoothing her skirt. Before stepping away, she turned to Simon. "Will you stay?" "For a while. I was hoping you'd ask." The door opened, and Naomi greeted the woman with a genuine smile, guiding her toward the travel section. Simon watched from the corner, his arms folded, a quiet pride softening his features. As the afternoon passed, more customers trickled in, some curious, some familiar. Naomi moved among them with ease, recommending titles, answering questions, laughing in that low, honest way Simon had first noticed months ago in a wine bar lit by candlelight. Near closing, she returned to the counter. He was still there. "You stayed the whole day," she said. "I'll stay every day if you let me." Naomi stepped into his arms without hesitation. "I want that." Simon brushed his thumb along her jaw. "Do you remember what I said the first night we met? You said I apologized like it mattered. I didn't know then that it would be the beginning of everything." She kissed him, soft and slow, and the city faded around them. They married 5 months later in a quiet ceremony on a rooftop garden Simon had secretly purchased and filled with white tulips. Naomi wore a dress with pockets and carried a bouquet made of pages from her favorite novels. There were only 20 guests, all of them people who knew both of them by heart. He didn't give a grand speech. He just took her hand and said, "You built something out of nothing. And I didn't fall in love with you because you were brave. I fell in love with you because you never needed me. But you chose me anyway." They danced under string lights, barefoot by midnight, the skyline glittering around them. The store thrived. Naomi hired 2 part-time assistants and launched monthly author events. She started a book club that met every Thursday, and sometimes Simon would sneak in late, take the empty seat beside her, and listen quietly as she led the discussion. They traveled when they could, first to Edinburgh, then to Lisbon, then to a small town in Japan where Naomi bought a rare edition of Little Women and cried in the street. He never rushed her when she lingered in aisles longer than necessary. He just waited. On their 3rd anniversary, he gave her a notebook. The first page read, "For your stories. The ones you'll write now that you've lived them." She did. They were older by then. Not in years. In peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop questioning whether you belong and start living like you do. And every time Naomi unlocked the door to Lark and Company, even years later, she smiled. Because she still remembered the night she sat in the wrong seat. And how it turned out to be exactly the right one.